One more reason we can talk about is chasing the shiny object instead of mastering fundamentals. And we kind of talked about this as far as going after so many different lead sources, right? An agent says, "Oh, I sold 100 houses by doing this," and then you jump on that. You give yourself a week of doing that, it didn't work. You go back on Instagram, somebody says, "Oh, I post on TikTok and it gives me a lot of sales." You jump on TikTok.
Hey, future real estate stars, stop wasting your hard-earned money on overpriced courses that don't deliver results. Why pay hundreds, even thousands, when you can get the same training for free? Click the link in the description below and start your real estate journey the smart way. Learn proven strategies, insider tips, and build your business without breaking the bank. Your success starts now.
You know? Another one says, "Oh, I knock doors in this neighborhood and it gives me a lot of sales." You go and you go knocking doors and nothing happens, you know? So you're chasing the shiny object. It's the shiny object syndrome, right? And I think you need to be able to break away from that. And you need to master fundamentals, you know, master the basics. You know, mastery, they say, comes from 1,000 hours of repetitive work, right? For 1,000 hours, you've been doing this thing for 1,000 hours. And we talked about the surnames of British people, right? When you hear a butler, you know, you hear somebody called Butler or somebody called Smith, or you hear somebody called a baker, that was derived from the craft they were in. Some people were bakers. You hear Fisher, you hear these last names from the British people. It came from the craft they and their family or friends, whatever, were in. And that's how the last name came about. A Smith was like maybe a goldsmith, you know, or a blacksmith, right? So, and it took, this is before the standard, you know, form of education where people go to school now. That form of education really just came about during the industrial age. You got to keep in mind, before the Industrial Revolution, schools were not a thing. Schools became a thing when every parent had to go work. And they just needed a place to put the kids. So they started creating these schools. You understand? There were training centers, even back since the Greek and Roman period, right? You have training centers. But for the most part, before the Industrial Revolution, even in London, to learn a skill, you go be an apprentice. So you shadow a master, meaning this person is a master in their craft. They'll say a master goldsmith, a master blacksmith, a master baker, a master butcher, because they have done that for over 1,000 hours. Talking about practice, right? You know the famous Allen Iverson thing, right? Practice, and then, you know, we're talking about practice. But anyway, yes, we are talking about practice. Shadowing that master, that person that has done this thing for over 1,000 hours, right? And instead of chasing the shiny object, you become a master at your craft. You've done this thing now for over 1,000 hours, repetitive nature, muscle memory, right? So why do basketball players say, "Oh, I shoot 1,000 shots a day"? It's just muscle memory, muscle memory. You need to develop that, right? So you are a professional. They say professional. Amateur basketball players don't go shooting 1,000 shots a day. Well, some do if they're trying to make it to the pros. But even the pros, when they've arrived, they do that in order to sharpen their skills. How come you are now claiming to be a professional, but you're not doing what it takes to master your fundamentals, right? Finally, we talk about burnout from poor time management and work-life balance. So that's why I always say, even in my 7-point business plan that I talked about in the other podcast episode, one of the points was give yourself some grace. You know, you're a human. You know, don't use that grace as an excuse to be a slacker, you know, to always be slacking off. But you need to be graceful to yourself. Like, even the Pomodoro technique, right? When it's time to prospect, nobody, unless a superhuman, is going to be able to prospect for 4 hours straight. So one of the ways people used to motivate and keep themselves alert is like, you go for 25 minutes, you break for 5. You go for 35, you break for 7. However you want to split it. That keeps you honest, keep you going, because you don't want to burn out. If you keep getting rejected all for 4 hours, who does that? You get tired. So you go 25 break, 25 break, you know. Same goes with your life in real estate. You go for a week, a month. Sometimes be okay on yourself, be easy on yourself, and then take a break. You know, treat yourself. Sometimes you reward your behavior, you know. You feel as though if I made all my prospecting calls, I'll buy myself this little thing. You know, I'll go to a particular restaurant, whatever it may be. So those are just things you can keep in mind. And as to why agents fail, just a few more, what can we say, bonus points right here. You can talk about the myth of passive income. You know, that's why agents fail, because when they see, oh, I'm a real estate agent, they think it's passive income. It's they can just sit down and the houses will sell themselves. You know, people will come to them and say, hey, I want to sell my house, put my house on the market. You know, so they got this idea of it being passive, like they don't have to do anything, and the income just flows. So it's a myth. It's really a full-time business, you know. Yet and still, you don't want to go from a job and be a glorified employee in a real estate environment. That's why we talk about leveraging other people, you know, like personal assistant and things of the transaction coordinators, or even automation. So anyway, the myth of passive income, people get disappointed when they jump in and they find out they got to do work. You know, I know a bunch of lazy people that jump into real estate thinking this is going to solve their problem. And I just laugh, like, really, if they know I work even harder here sometimes than, you know. Anyway, it's not a passive income thing. You're very much actively involved and engaged. Another one would be a financial trap. Understanding the hidden costs, licensing fees, marketing, we touched on that. Just people having a low financial runway, it derails most careers.
Your ultimate hub for real estate insights, breaking news, entrepreneurial wisdom, investing strategies, and self-development hacks. If you're ready to expand your mind and stay ahead of the game floor, you're in the right place. Subscribe now. Your future self will thank you.